Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to The Pursuit. I'm your host, Ben Spangle. Very excited to have a new guest that for some of you have heard of Alex, some of you haven't, but I'm super excited to introduce you to him, Alex Wisch. He is one of the top performance specialists in the States, which is exciting. I'll tell you what, as I've gotten to know him a little bit, this is one very fit guy, mentally, physically, financially, all of it. And he's really become one of the go-to mental and physical performance specialists to a lot of professional athletes, people that are boundward for the Olympics, CEOs, private equity leaders. And I think what's kind of unique about his own story, which we'll dive into, is got this great life now, but literally had, you were telling me, I think literally had about 8 years in a pretty major depression where life was not going the way you wanted to. And let me tell you a little bit more about him. I mean, he's an entrepreneur. He's done lots of different business endeavors. He's won an ultra marathon, tons of different athletic competitions. I think one of the coolest things, I'll get you to talk about the challenge you just did at the end of May there, which I think is so cool. And, now an angel investor and so many other things too. So Alex, I'm so excited to have you. Thanks for being with us and our audience, and really looking forward to our time together today.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this just because before we even dive into the story, you just completed this challenge May 30th, right? Where you were 20-pound vest on, 1,000 strict pull-ups, 2,000 push-ups, 3,000 squats, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. So tell us about that. Tell us about kind of what led to creating that challenge and where that came from. And yeah, let's dive into that.
Sure. So the challenge is Fitness for Mental Health challenge, or Fitness for Mental Health feat. And part of the piece behind it, and we'll kind of dive into this a little later, is like you were saying before, there's 8 years of my life I went through major depression. And during that time, fitness played a huge role. It helped me get better. It gave me, things I can accomplish on a day-to-day basis. It gave me goals. It helped me on the physical level, and on the mental level, it helped with confidence. So, part of this was, helping people share, well, I was sharing my story and helping people, gain a little more control if they are dealing with depression or challenges, and kind of create awareness and showing them that there's, ways out there, like holistic means to help them gain a little more control of their life. Mm-hmm. This challenge kind of came to me because when the pandemic hit, all competitions were canceled.
Right.
And, I have a history. I've done everything from, I wrestled, I did MMA, I was a professional sailboat racer. Most recently was training for the America's Cup in sailboat racing. The team I was training for, Stars and Stripes, actually didn't get funding, so that kind of came to a halt. Then went into CrossFit. And I've done a lot of OCR and Spartan races too, and I was trying to do some semi-professional stuff there. But yeah, when the pandemic hit, people were isolated. I was isolated. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have so much of a community in the physical area to kind of really motivate me or events to train for. So, kind of combining that need, I created my own little feat to help me on kind of a mental level, mm-hmm. Kind of push forward on a day-to-day basis, kind of create purpose with my physical training. And it actually originally, and then the purpose behind it also evolved with getting to a point where I was in a comfortable place in my life and I really wanted to share my personal story. And so I used that to kind of piggyback off that, mental, off the mental health aspect for the feat. Mm-hmm. And the feat itself was the day before Memorial Day. And so I also wanted to raise, money for a good cause, get a big awareness out there. And because it was the day before Memorial Day, I also combined the idea of veterans. And, there's a lot of veterans out there that battle with mental health challenges. There's a lot that's, passed away from suicide. Mm-hmm. So I raised money with Team Red, White, and Blue, who uses community and fitness, which I'm a huge fan of, to help veterans overcome the challenges of mental health. Mm. But along with this feat, yeah, so basically it was in December. I had this idea of doing, originally started as doing the Murph times 10, something big. And the Murph is a workout where you run a mile, you do 1,000 pull-ups. Sorry, you run a mile, do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, you run a mile again. Mm. It's a CrossFit workout.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to do that times 10. And that's kind of where I started, something kind of really ambitious, something big, something where I didn't know if I was going to be able to finish it or not finish it, but it was more of the idea of just striving towards something that's enormous, the journey, what I learned around it, and the inspiration behind it. And then along the journey, actually 3 days just after I decided to do this, I tore my adductor and my lower abdominal muscle.
Mm.
So at that point, I had to do a bunch of like rehab for that. That kind of pulled the running piece out, which by all means was probably the best idea because that's just would been a whole nother beast to add to the equation. But yeah, and then I kept training. The lower body was the least conditioned going into it because I pretty much had like 2 months just prior to the day before Memorial's Day to actually really condition my lower body because I was recovering from the injury. But yeah, so going into it and then, training for it, was a big learning experience. I mean, marathons out there, which are, high volume, but this is something you're doing now. You're wearing a weighted vest and you're doing pull-ups, push-ups, and squats, which now becomes not only high volume, but high intensity.
For sure.
So really figuring out how to train for something like that, where I'm not training so hard that I put myself in a 4 or 5 day recovery hole, which happened initially. But, training hard enough or making gains towards that goal and getting to where I need to be. So there's a lot to emphasize. I'm all about, whether you're working hard on a mental level as a professional or a physical level as an athlete, train, work, but recover harder. So big emphasis, every piece for this.
Recover harder. Yeah.
But, as getting closer and closer, I just kind of kept, hit some hurdles, hit some challenges. And something I tell people, I still deal with aspects of depression. I've overcome most of the challenges, but I still have my harder days and I have to kind of navigate that.
Mm-hmm.
I kept this in mind and kept going. And then as we got closer, I was basically running a charity fundraiser and training for a competition, which is like, it's one thing training for a big competition by itself. It's another thing doing like a charity fundraiser, but now I'm doing both. So it's like figuring out how to balance both. But yeah, so it came into it. We got Spartan to do it live on their Instagram, which was awesome. We had as I was doing it, every 30 minutes, we had other people who are vets, influencers, really inspirational people come on board and just kind of talk about mental health, talk about veterans, as like a split screen as I was doing it. And and I went out and I did it. It was right by the Fallen Hero Memorial, which is in Boston. And that day it was actually pouring rain, about 45 degrees out, which just makes it a little more fun, a little more inspirational. But ironically, I mean, it was better than it being like 80 degrees out.
Absolutely.
So, so as the day went on and I was doing this, I never thought about this, but the water actually made the vest and everything heavy.
Yeah.
So I went in having a 20-pound vest and probably came out having an extra 10 pounds on me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went into it, tempo stayed consistent throughout the entire event, added a little more rest where I needed to, and I finished in 6 hours and 8 minutes, and we raised $30,000 for Team Red, White, and Blue. So it's pretty exciting,
man. That's amazing. Great job on that. That's a crazy story. You mentioned too, just this idea of overcoming obstacles, adversity, hurdles. And I know that's a big part of your message that you teach a lot too. Can we go back a little bit, go back to college? Because I know you shared with me a bit of your story. I want the audience to hear that. Things are going good. You're competing in lots of stuff, right? Professional sailboating as well as I think you're really involved in a lot of sports. But bring us back to that time and then maybe what kind of led into where you went through that dark period in life there. Yeah.
So, I mean, the depression, the deepest aspects of depression, I mean, I'm very transparent what I go through. And that's, something I really want to share with the world. The hardest part about it was like suicidal ideation. It was constant. It was really challenging. But there were things that, added and kind of created this perfect storm. When I was a freshman in college, I had expectations on myself to be a perfectionist. The idea of striving towards perfection, getting a 4.0 GPA. And when I was a sophomore, I was in an Ivy League school working really hard. And I also have dyslexia, some learning processing problems, and ADHD. So, I have to find ways to kind of work around. But I pretty much burnt myself out, striving towards something that doesn't really have a lot of rationale behind it. I mean, you don't need a 4.0 in GPA in college to become a successful individual by all means. I mean, I actually never finished college and, I've done pretty well for myself. But yeah, going in my sophomore year into the fall where, I also have a little bit of seasonal depression, everything kind of built up. I literally woke up, it was like September 17th, the day before my best friend came out to visit me. I remember this moment, things were definitely adding up beforehand, but this moment was very vivid. September 17th, the day before, my best friend came out. We went out with a couple girls from grad school there. We had some drinks, came back home, had like a drink, came back home, went to bed. The next day I woke up and I just felt like my world was flipped upside down. Like, and it was kind of weird how that was such a pivoting point. From that point, I started to develop, never in my life had suicide thoughts before, started it, tried to sail on nationals. And when I'm out there doing the thing I absolutely love doing, that, is my distraction, from the world, a place where I find like myself in peace and can focus and in the flow. I'm out there trying to sail and having, thoughts of wanting to end my life. And at that point, I knew I needed to leave school. I knew I needed to get a little more help. And that's kind of where this long journey began of, diving deep into the whole world of, mental health. And then from there, because I have always been a baseline, very determined individual. So because the struggles were really hard, I tried medication. I've tried pretty much probably everything out there at some point. Put myself in the hospital like over 10 times.
Wow.
More just because I didn't know what else to do. Ended up at different residential facilities, halfway homes, some places that were really not good places, shut down by the Board of Mental Health. I mean, there's a lot in this journey. And, sometimes there's a point I had no money, got myself in really big financial debt, didn't really have a home to go to. But, so those were some of the major challenges I dealt with. And I saw a lot of different doctors, had, different doctors, specialists in this world kind of fit you into their bubble, and probably came out at the end having like 10 different diagnoses, which also didn't make any sense. And, I got to a point where I really hit an edge, and I was looking like, to me, originally, I thought like, okay, like, one day I woke up, and things just flipped, which looking back, there's more adding to it. But I was like, well, why can't there be some pill just to kind of fix this and make it go away, right? And so emphasis originally on that. And, but that wasn't in my control. Even if something out there was going to help me, I had no idea when I'd find that, when that would happen. And as I was trying to try different medications and the side effects and the challenges and things also affecting my fitness, I kind of hit a breaking point where I really needed to figure out like, okay, well, what can I control? Those are the pieces where I really started to take control of my life and diving into the aspects of, one is like fitness. Like, okay, so I can do fitness daily basis. It helps with regenerating like neurons in the brain, plasticity, BDNF. So there's a lot of great things about fitness, endorphins. That's one thing. It's like other things like using like a light box, like light therapy, getting outdoors more, light serotonin in the retina, sleep, making sure I wake and go to bed at the same time, keeping myself scheduled. I mean, first I just made sure I was out of the house all the time and just worked out of the house. And basically I slept there when I was going through really challenging times, left the house, did what I need to for work, worked on projects or whatever I could do, but just stay out of the house and came back there to sleep again, just so I wasn't isolated. Nutrition was really big, cutting out caffeine. I mean, I know some people find caffeine beneficial. I know there's studies that can also, some amounts can help Alzheimer's. For me as an individual, it was counterproductive. So I cut that out. Find some supplements like, I use like CoQ10, PQQ, fish oil, some vitamin D. Creatine's also shown to have some help with depression. So out some simple supplements, but lifestyle changes, like, what was really in my control. And the other big piece too was, creating purpose and passion in my life, because the longer I was in a depression, the more I was pulled down and the more things had to be depressed about, because, this vicious cycle. And I kind of lost purpose and I lost a passion. I had nothing to really hold on to in the further distance. So, finding, how can I help people and how can I make sense of my journey, which is what I do now. I take the lessons I've learned along my way and help people, which gives me a little sense of what I went through. And another big thing that really helped too was community. Community's huge. I'm very, very particular who I spend my time with. I try to surround myself with people that I inspire to, excel, to be like. They have a saying, and like also having mentors. Like there's also a saying with a mentor piece is, you want to have someone that's above and beyond your abilities that you want to inspire to be like. to have a peer mentor also. And then you also want a mentor that's, done things in the past that you've done, but are doing a better job at it. So having kind of different level mentors, and a finding community for me originally in Brooklyn Boulders, which was like a climbing lifestyle facility, but people are all in the fitness, wellness, and health. So it was a lot easier for me to adapt those behaviors. The people you're around, you adapt those, behaviors, you adapt their
100%. Yeah.
Start to kind of change. So that's kind of like a little basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so many great things in there, what you talked about, but I mean, most people listening, certainly everyone at all times in our life have gone through challenging times. There's no doubt. And I know there's some people listening that are going through some of those times right now. I think one of your great messages is control what you can control, right?
Yeah.
Control what you can control. So there's feeling like at that point in your life, there's so many things that are out of control in your life. What can I control? And taking a look at that. And I mean, these are the things that at the end of the day, when we can take more of that, I guess that personal choice to say, I'm going to start doing this. I know I can do this. I imagine it wasn't the magic pill necessarily. Okay, I did it day one and all of a sudden I feel amazing, right? But you kept doing it. You kept building those habits in, and then life started to progress from what I gather.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I do want to make a note, because I do make a note of this. Along with all these things, I did also, just a side note, I do also take, very minimal medication for my depression. I just want to, some people in the world, very pro, very anti combination. For me, the point is like the different things I did added a little bit of percent. When you add them all together, you get a very large. You're not going to necessarily find something that's going to give you like a 50% change or a 60% change. I mean, it depends on your situation. You might, but everything you do, adds on to making a slight change. And even those, a bunch of small slight changes adds to a very large change.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And the other piece is, this is something I like talking to a lot of people about, is the idea of marginal gains. The idea that, it's like an investment. An investment takes time to make a return. Put money in something and the next day, get a ton out. I mean, that's just not likely. So the idea of marginal gains, when I made these changes, and I pushed myself, and actually originally back to getting into like a profession, I got back into personal training and climbing coaching, struggle. But the changes I went through, I didn't have an immediate response. I had to kind of trust the system, understand that like, okay, these things are helpful. One action precedes motivation. So I had to keep doing these, and realizing that I may not feel the effects for a while. So we have to do things regardless of how you feel. And it was like symbolically or metaphorically, imagine yourself, for me, it's like you're pushing against a wall. And it's almost like a wall that's like, 10 bricks thick, right? And you're just there pushing. And deep down inside that if you keep pushing that wall's eventually going to move and fall over. Some people around you might start questioning you, like, why is this person pushing this wall? And kind of, might give you some kind of pushback against that concept. But eventually that wall that you are pushing will fall over. And I hit a point where eventually things started to pay off, and I kind of hit that exponential growth piece. And, both physically, as an athlete, mentally and professionally and financially, they all started to come together.
Incredible. I love what you said. Action precedes motivation. I think so many times we're waiting for motivation to do the thing, but doing the thing actually creates the motivation. And then the second point to what you said in there too, is just doing it regardless of how you feel, trusting the process that this is going to work for me. As long as I keep doing the things, I'm going to get the results that I want. And I think everybody too, as you listen to Alex, I mean, incredible story. If you think about, for myself, I never had to deal with that. So I've had small amounts. I think all of us have been depressed at times, but for me, it was small windows. It wasn't long. So I've never gone through anything like that. But as you listen to a story and where his life is now, it's easy at times to think when somebody's successful in many areas of life, as Alex is, it's easy to think that it's always been that way. But the one of the things about successful people is the willingness to do the things they need to do, whether they feel like doing it or not, or they want to do it or not, is the willingness to do it.
Yeah.
Action precedes motivation. That was said so well, man. So well. I want to talk about a few things because there's lots of things. I know you're a performance coach. Obviously, you're physical fitness, to be able to help people in massive ways. Tell us a little bit about, there's a couple questions I have for you, but I want to know, say someone came to you today, nowhere near physical fitness that they want to be. They're not feeling great. Where would you start them? Where do you start them to start making some changes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So this kind of dives into a concept that I fully take to heart. So, I mean, when I work with people, I work both on, the physical aspect, biological, and the psychological.
Okay.
So one, when it comes to fitness, or when it comes to making any change, whether it's fitness, whether it's physical or mental, we need to make sure we have an environment we're going to foster. Okay. We're going to blossom. If you take a plant and you want to grow a flower, right? And it's in a very dark place, or the soil's not right, or it's too acidic or too basic, or there's fungus or bugs that are going to eat it, it's not going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you really want it to grow, and if you put it in the ground, it just wouldn't grow. So what's most important is like stepping back and getting a full picture, So I'm looking like, okay, people come to me also and they're like, well, I want to feel better. I want to enhance my life. What are the big biohackers? And the number one thing I'll go to first is, where's your sleep? Okay. So sleep, because sleep is what, if you're really tired, it's going to hurt our motivation. It can hurt your mood. And it can throw off a lot of different things in our life. Right. And it can also, when it comes to recovery for training. So one is sleep. I'm always like, okay, let's try to aim for, finding out where they are, trying to figure out what's optimal for them. Trying to aim for that, 7 to 9 hour block. Some people can do a little more, some people can do a little less, but trying to find that consistent sleep and wake schedule. So that's one.
Can I stop you for a second? I want to ask you about this. What do you say? Because I think so many people, they're just trying to avoid sleep. What's when they tell you, man, I don't want to sleep that much because I need more time in the day. What do you tell them?
Yeah, no, that's very common. So like people, there's the idea of being so people have this idea that if you work harder, you're going to be more successful. Right. And, that's been an idea that's been around for a long time, but where we're evolving to is working smarter. Okay. So it's not necessarily about spending more time working. It's about the time you are spending working, being as efficient as possible. So if you have an entire day and you're not sleeping and you're just crushing through an entire day, there's a couple different things that can happen. But motivation and focus might eventually peak in the beginning, but eventually starts dwindling out. Mm-hmm. And eventually your efficiency and productivity just really diminishes. So the idea is, that sleep allows us to have a better retention with memory, allows us to focus more, and allows us to bring our best self to the equation. Also just make better decisions. I mean, if you want to excel and be successful, you're going to have to make some pretty tough decisions. And sleep deprivation can definitely, it can be equivalent to being drunk. I mean, if you're out there being drunk, I mean, I know I've made poor decisions in my past when I've had too many drinks.
Yeah.
So I mean, like the idea that, recovery and working efficiently and optimizing recovery, so like taking breaks in the day, getting enough sleep, will actually equate to more work, more output, instead of just, cutting out all hours of sleep and just working and nonstop.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So you start with sleep, and then what's next?
Yeah. So sleep. So sleep's one of the big things I look at. And then, along with fitness, if we're looking at the fitness piece, the goal piece, I'm going to look at, their environment. Okay. So environment, because if you have goals, but let's just say you're hanging out with all your friends, like none of your friends work out, they all have really bad eating habits. They're all going out and drinking all the time. And have some, or doing drugs or things that are just counterproductive towards your goal. It's likely that you're going to get sucked in and pulled in. Right. Or what's going on in the household environment, or, people that you're surrounding yourself. It could be family, but like, how are they affecting your life? So those might be some things we kind of just look at, assess. Is your partner being supportive? Is there a way that you can share what your goal is with them or your friends, and that, they can be supportive towards your cause? Are there communities too, like not only me working with a person, but are there other communities we can meet people that want to live this, higher evolving, physical fit, mental wellness life. So community environment is probably the next thing I'd look at. And in addition to that, also, nutrition's a big piece. Those are building blocks, right? You can try to build the world's biggest skyscraper, but if you're not using the right pieces, the thing's just going to come crumbling down. It won't be sustainable. And again, when we fuel ourselves properly, all the hard work we put in is going to equate to a greater outcome, right? So, I like, again, working with people on a smart level. So, you have the sleep, you have community, you have nutrition, are some of the pieces there on a baseline. In addition, other things I do like looking at just to kind of create some good expectations and understanding is I like people getting their blood work. I'm really big in preventative health. I'm really big in just kind of seeing the whole picture. If we're looking at that fitness piece, even on a cognitive level, I've had people hit real walls and struggle and, their thyroid's off. Like, if you have hypothyroidism, like that can cause depression, that can cause slowing the cognition. If you do have drastically, low testosterone, that can also cause cognitive problems. It can cause challenges with putting on muscle. And there's other things that you can check out, that overall look at general health and wellness. So, I like having that picture so I can create also realistic expectations of the person I'm working with. I get their previous history, and then I start with what's familiar with them and kind of work up from there and creating an educational platform where I know, like, if we're talking the fitness piece, where I know I can work with them and not only are they getting more fit, but they're also learning a little bit, because the reality is that life's not perfect. Sometimes they won't be able to meet with me and they got to have a little bit of knowledge in their back pocket. And sometimes you need a plan A and you need a plan B, like that's another big thing I teach with people, even with like, whether it's work ethics, whether it's planning for a company or a business, or it's, training fitness wise, plan A is the idea of how do we do something and constantly move forward and progress. And then plans B is how do we sustain, right? Because if you're climbing Mount Everest or a very tall mountain, it's not like it goes straight up, like, straight up vertical. I mean, there's ups and plateaus, up and plateaus. What we want to avoid is just kind of falling off and doing nothing. So, if life gets stressful, there's things with kids, there's other stresses in your life and family, or work's getting really stressful. How do we create a secondary plan that can be in place to maintain our, gains, or to maintain what we're doing with our business, or things that are efficiently without making big losses at those points in life too.
Alex, that is so good. I've never heard it put that way. I am going to start applying that in my own life, because I'm growth focused, right? What am I doing to get to the next level? But then all of us go through, of course, seasons where you're not going to be in that mode, and to have that baseline plan, if you will, of how do you maintain in some of those more challenging times, man, that's gold right there.
There's also just a quick side note, like, and using just fitness, you can use fitness as a piece of this, but people really don't know what maintenance is. People have this such a one-sided approach that, like, if you're not progressing, like, you're not moving forward. But having a real understanding of like knowing what the bare minimum you need to do, not saying you always want to hit the bare minimum, but knowing what you need to do so you can sustain is huge. Because I mean, when I was dealing with my depression, so many people deal with, whether it's mental health challenges, anxiety, depression, other things that happen in life that can environmentally, they can cause downtimes. For me personally, my fitness, like, there was times where I didn't do any fitness at all, because I'm like, well, I can't do all the crazy stuff I wanted to do. But if I look back on my journey and look, I'm doing a lot of, I'm very fit now, but if I look back and was able to do something and figure out how to sustain some level of fitness, my height of where I would be now would be even much higher. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So good. So you're going to take a look at where they are. If they're just, hey, I want to get in better shape physically, mentally, you'll take a look at where they are, assess their sleep, where are they at, challenge them to get into that 7 to 9 hour window. Really look at the environment, associations, as you mentioned. It's that we become who we spend time with. We become the behaviors of those that we're around. So taking a look at that, leveling up the nutrition and then really inspecting even where they at blood work wise, right? So great points on that. I want to switch gears. So now let's say your work, I know everyone's going to be a customized plan. I get that. But say someone's already high-end athlete, really fit, really into that part of their life already. What's maybe one or two quick strategies you would give someone listening that's like that? Hey, try this. This may level up your performance.
So we talking about like an athlete particularly at this point?
Yeah, let's say, an athlete, yeah.
So one thing with a high-end athlete, the biggest things I'll do with a high-end athlete, motivation for the most part doesn't seem to be, that much of a challenge. And sometimes it can be. What I'm looking really for with them is optimizing recovery, is really how can we get better at recovery. So there's something like recently I'm working with a company called Pnoe, and they're doing a whole thing. They create this whole app that can assess like your recovery, your sleep, your activity, your cognition, all this crazy stuff with wearables, which is really cool. But they create called your minimal effective dose, right? So with the top athlete, people think more is better. And here's a great example. If you are training, if you overtrain, you're going to dig a recovery hole and you're not going to hit your goals. I know like a friend of mine, Hunton McIntyre, he's like one of the best functional fitness athletes in the world. And he was training for the Murph world record, and he knew he could do it like under 30 minutes, but, he overtrained like 2 weeks before and it hurt his score. So for someone who's a top, pro, I would say, really trying to focus on what's the minimal effective dose, meaning what's the least amount, and this might be kind of, people be like, what are you talking about here? But really, what is the least amount of training you can do that's going to create growth and adaptation to head towards your goal, but not put you in such a big recovery hole? So that's, and then two, injury prevention. Because when it comes to these high performing athletes, they're challenging their bodies in such a demanding way that, what really holds them back. When I work with them, my number one goal is always how do I prevent injuries, right? Because when you have these people top talent, they're competing each other, the injuries is one big thing that can easily pull them back in a season. So injury prevention, making sure that no one's doing any, like if your focus is on a big event, like don't go out and, I don't know, do base jumping or something like that. That's not always the best of your skateboard. But yeah, so the idea is focusing on recovery, understanding, maybe diving a little deeper, understanding like HRV is a big thing, or heart rate variability, understanding at what point our body is, when you use HRV, you can understand when your body is more recovered, there's less breakdown of muscles, and then the injury prevention. So I keep things a little on the simpler side, but it's beneficial. Yeah,
that's awesome. I like that idea of minimal effective dose. I've when I look at my own fitness, I mean, I've never thought in that exact term, but I've always, for myself, I'm not an athlete by any means, but for myself, I've thought about that. I can get maximum results for the least amount of effort when it comes to that. So I think that's a cool concept that probably anybody could use in whatever their goal they're looking to. What's the minimal effective dose?
There's can I throw your way too?
Yeah.
When it comes on the mental frontier for a lot of these pro athletes, there's something I also really like, and I like this too with individuals. So there's a concept I have. People tend to get a little too spread out, almost try to do too many ideas.
Okay.
I'm all about focusing on the basics, mastering the basics. If you master the basics, like you're going to be well above like some of the top performers, right? And that just means like, so we talked about like sleep, we talked about nutrition, we talked about fitness. Some of those we talked about like community, how can you work in different environments? The idea is like taking some of the basic elements in your life, but being able to master them in different environments with different stressors. Okay. So maybe it's not like getting the newest peptide or find the newest thing you put in your body, but more like, okay, so like sleep, like how do I figure out different skills for sleep? If I'm really anxious or this happens, or like I'm traveling, because I have clients that travel to India and there's jet lag. For athletes too, if we're looking at like performance or more on like the psychological piece, there was a fairly famous athlete called Gable, who was a wrestler. He was a multiple gold medalist wrestler. And what made him phenomenal was he didn't know 1,000 moves. He knew like 3 moves, but he could hit them from every single angle. Right. So, and it was, he mastered the basics, but he literally master the basics from all angles. So, I mean, I know different sports are different things, and some definitely involve a lot more complex movements or tricks or whatever you're doing. But, a great starting point is really just mastering the basics, whether you're an athlete, professional, or striving towards, all different kinds of goals.
What do you find, because you do a lot of coaching with CEOs, executives, business people, entrepreneurs, what do you find are some of the common, maybe some of the common challenges or issues that people performing at that level in one area, business that way, that they run into?
Well, one of the most basic ones that you hit upon was the idea of overworking, idea of working longer and not smarter. So like, helping people become more efficient, figuring out like what you can delegate, I think is really big. Helping people understand that if you do want to grow to a very big level, you can't do all the work yourself. You need to trust people. You do need to create a team. And the sooner you get on board with that idea, just the more work you're going to get done. Me personally, like, I'm very particular when it comes to grammar and writing and all this stuff. But, now I have like someone that's helping me with my social media. I have like a virtual assistant. I have someone that helps me raise capital for startups I work with. So I kind of branched out and create other team members. So delegating, creating a team, creating trust. It's okay if everything's not perfect. What's really important, I'd say, more important is how quickly you learn. So like in the startup world, I work with this other company that they're doing some really cool things with CEOs and athletes where it comes to testing like recovery and cortisol levels, and they're creating an app, they're doing gamification. But you can like wait and try to create like the best product on the market, then launch it. But where you're actually going to make more progress, if you get something out there, you start taking chances, you see really what works, and really the people that excel the most are the ones that learn the fastest. I think the pandemic was a great example of that. There's a lot of people who had to pivot, and the people who could learn what worked and what didn't the quickest and were willing to take some challenges and step out of their comfort zone really excelled.
Wow. Yeah. So cool. That's awesome. I like talking about that kind of stuff. Learn faster. How can we learn faster? Be able to pick it up. I'm curious about this because we actually haven't talked about this before, but I know it's a part of your life. I want to hear where mindfulness has played into your life now, right? The success that you have now. Explain that a little bit more. Someone's new to the concept, and then maybe a specific exercise they can apply.
Sure. So to kind of start that off, I'll give you a little baseline knowledge. And this has to do with the idea of, productivity, the idea of some of you might know of like flow, flow being, a state of mind where your well-being is high, you're focused, you're concentrated, your surroundings kind of melt away, you kind of lose a sense of time, and your brain it's actually, there was a misconception. People used to think your brain's firing on all cylinders. It's the opposite. Your brain's actually working very, very efficiently. They actually showed SPECT scans comparing someone who was meditating and someone in a flow state, and they were very, very similar with in the brain. There was a little part, I think, between the left and frontal lobe that was activated because that's to do with creativity. But, it's going in that direction when it comes to mindfulness, kind of create a base. It's reducing cognitive load is kind of like where I'm going with this. The idea that, just like a computer that deals with RAM, if you have too many apps open, if you have Netflix open, if you have Photoshop, browsing the web, who knows what, all of a sudden everything starts slowing down. So, taking that, on a, metaphoric level with our brain, how do we close those other apps going on? How do we kind of close away some of those thoughts? So we're really just minimizing our cognitive load and quieting our brain, because you can only really balance about 4 thoughts at a given moment, or 4 concepts in your brain to give a moment. And when you kind of move from one thing to the other, or like in today's society, there's so many these meetings. Everyone's like on a meeting. Like it's like their days are full of meeting. And I work with this with all through some of these. I was working this with a vice president of a biotech company, and their day is literally no breaks, all meetings. But like the thoughts you have from one meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting, just like there's no time to deload. So kind of going back to that mindfulness piece. So mindfulness gives you an opportunity to be present. It helps you reduce that cognitive load. So, you kind of can push all those thoughts, let them kind of drift by as if they're leaves on a little river. But it helps you bring yourself more aware of the present, not get lost in all the thoughts in your head. So for me, where it really helped is, when I'm dealing with, like, on a more, like, we'll step back a little bit, like when I was doing my depression, when I was dealing with, the challenges when things weren't getting whether I wanted to, and, life was really challenging, or I'm dealing with suicidal thoughts or anxieties, focusing on mindfulness, which can be simply just like sitting outside, looking at the trees, looking at your surroundings, and start using your senses, meaning like, you're just like, what do you smell? What do you hear? What do you see? What's currently in your present moments, to get away from those other distractors that can prevent you from accomplishing the goals you want to accomplish.
That's really good. Yeah. Sorry
about that.
No worries. Perfect. Yeah, all good. So good on that idea. So just even taking time to just, as simple as, like you say, just maybe even looking at the trees outside or just being present in there.
There's like, so like when I was working with a couple of professionals recently, and so I do like finding little hacks in your day where it's like, if you're already doing something, how can you make that as like a mindfulness moment? How can you make it as like a deload cognitive moment? Mm-hmm. So I call something I like doing is called mindfulness traveling. Mm-hmm. And, one thing with mindfulness, you understand, like, if you're going to be present in a moment, you want to step in that moment and look at things factually without judgment, right? So if you're walking outside, you're doing something, and you see someone like a man or a woman pushing a baby's carriage, you're not going to say they look pretty or ugly. You're not going to say the baby is cute. You're going to basically say, whether it's a man or a woman, you're going to say, if there's a tree out there, there's like, there's 5 trees I can see, that tree is brown. You want to state very factual things in your present and get away from using judgments. And then when I work with these people, like, people travel to work, whether they're in a car or they're walking, or if you don't travel to work, going outside for like a 5-minute, 10-minute little walk in the morning, but just kind of going around and looking at your environment and trying to find one thing new that you haven't noticed before. Because there's like thousands of blades of grass out there. And I tell you, if you mean the walk you take, you can always notice something new. And so, it's a little piece of the equation.
I love that. That's a great idea of bringing that to. And I think that idea of without judgment, just looking at the way things are is an important one. Our ego gets so hung up on judging every good, bad, right, wrong, pretty, ugly, like you said, all that kind of stuff. But just to look at it as it is, it just is, the tree is, right? That's awesome, man. Hey, this has been phenomenal. So great. A lot of great stuff. I really appreciate you sharing some high level stuff to help people go to the next level of their life. Our podcast, as you know, is The Pursuit. Everything about here is the pursuit of your best self, right? Becoming that next version of you, which I think I know that's a never ending process. You're never going to reach the best version of you, because then you'll be able to see a further one. In closing though, we've covered a lot of great things. People listening, they're on the pursuit. They want to become their best self. They want to become the next version of them. If you were to leave them with one last piece of advice, what would be the thing you would want? They never get to hear anything from you ever again. What would be the one thing you'd want to leave them with?
There is no goal that's too big. And understand it's not always about, achieving that goal, but just striving towards that goal. The things that you learn, the people you inspire, things like that can change the world. So I take those big goals, take those big ambitions, and strive towards them. Do your best. You won't lose. For me, it's either I win or I learn.
Nice. Yeah. Win or learn. So great. Hey, thank you for that. Lastly, where can people connect with you? I know you got your website, Wischfit, right? WISCHFIT.com. Go check out his website there. Where else? Instagram, I think.
Yeah, in Instagram, it's Wisch, WISCH.fit. And then also another place you can check out if you want to learn more about that feed I did. And I'm going to start creating a lot more stuff for charities and fundraising is over at fitnessformentalhealth.org. So those are, cool.
Okay, cool. All right. We'll put those in the show notes too, everybody. Alex, hey, thanks so much for the time. This has been awesome. I've loved it. And everybody, hey, as you're listening, make sure you share this with somebody or share it with multiple people, post it on your social media, tag Alex in it, tag me in it, share it with as many people as you can. If you're new to the show, go and click subscribe. If you're on Apple, leave a review. We appreciate you being with us. Great having you here as always. And we always want to strive to bring great guests like Alex that can help you live that best self, really in the pursuit of becoming the next version of you. So Alex, thanks again. You are making a difference. This was awesome. Just for me alone, this was awesome. I got some great stuff.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Really great pleasure.
Okay, we'll see you all soon, everybody.